Welcome to MojoPlays, and today we're taking a look at 20 games that many folks dismiss a little too quickly. Remember, don't knock it till you try it. Before we begin, we publish new videos all week long, so be sure to subscribe to MojoPlays and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos. Doom 3. When looking at the entire franchise, Doom 3 is very much the black sheep of the family. It's slower than the other games, it leans way too heavily into horror, and it's much more restrictive in movement given how condensed every room feels. Plus, crane puzzles? Yeah, it can be hard to like this one, but when you approach it as its own thing and accept it more of a general survival horror instead of a boomer shooter, it can be an enjoyable experience. We only hope you're playing the BFG edition with all the improvements to help make it a little more like the other Doom games. Otherwise, yeah, the original version is a bit of a mess. Marvel's Midnight Suns.
'Cause you know I'm the biggest Mole Man fan.
Midnight Suns was such an awesome game in how it blended tactical RPG gameplay with card-based mechanics and a light amount of dating sim tropes. Admittedly, the Abbey isn't going to please every player, so if Midnight Suns is so great, why is it on this list? Well, because many did write the game off in the months leading up to launch. Many dismissed it not because they didn't like the visuals, or their favorite heroes' costumes, or that it simply didn't look fun. No, much of the dismissal stemmed from the fact that it was a card game.
Don't waste any time. Take them out before they can do any serious damage.
So, when the gameplay was revealed for the first time, developer Firaxis was met with a lot of comments saying, "Ew, gross, a card game." The game's great, guys.
Before we came to the Abbey, you said you were going to be DLC. What does that mean?
Deadpool living comfortably.
Dead Space. The remake of Dead Space had a lot writing against it, considering creator Glenn Schofield wasn't tied to the project. He was too busy working on Callisto Protocol, which turned out to be meh. But to Isaac Clarke, this remake not only rebuilt the original game from the ground up with new controls and assets, it also made lighting a part of the gameplay. Diverting power was crucial to your progression, forcing you to sacrifice comfort and confront danger. It simply did not look or play the same as the original game. Alas, the fans made their voices loud and clear by staying silent. And so, the remake for Dead Space 2 isn't happening, all because of poor sales. Banjo Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. When Rare and Xbox put out a teaser for a new Banjo game, fans were amped to see the bear and bird make the jump to Xbox 360. What they weren't expecting was a focus on building vehicles to obtain their jiggies and notes. It wasn't 3D platforming, it was racing, time trials, taxi driving, fetch quests, vehicular combat, and the occasional sport. And so, tantrums were thrown. The small section that gave the game a chance may not have found a good Banjo game, but what they did find was a unique game that wanted you to think outside of the box and find your own solutions to its various challenges. Sometimes you had to do challenges legitimately. Sometimes you could have enough parts to completely break the game and cheese the trophy. It was a clever game that encouraged players to get creative, if only more had given it a chance. Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Casuals were quick to embrace Brawl just as they would every new Smash game. This particularly was an exciting entry because of the Subspace Emissary mode, an entire campaign where we got to see Nintendo's heroes, and a few villains, team up to save the world. Unfortunately, the ultra-competitive players weren't having it. Yes, the tripping was annoying at times. Yes, it doesn't play as fast as Melee. We get it. But can't we appreciate the game for what it is? For what it does well in visuals, diverse game modes, and how it got more newcomers into the series? Why does Brawl have to be villainized for being 4 frames longer? Kidus Uprising.
You're here to help the townsfolk, so wipe out as many monsters as you can.
I'm on it.
Uprising was to be a triumphant return for Pit in the short-lived Kid Icarus series, giving the IP a brand new identity that Masahiro Sakurai and his team wanted to realize from Smash Bros. Brawl. The few that tried it found a remarkable action game that found a neat idea in blending traditional gamepad controls with touchscreen controls. To everyone else, though, the controls were weird. Yes, they were weird, but once you got a handle on things and played on a moderate or high difficulty, it all comes pretty natural after the first couple of chapters, much like any other game that you're playing for the very first time.
What? Really? How much harm could...
Ever heard of athlete's foot?
Skylanders series. We totally see where folks are coming from when expressing apathy and sometimes disdain for the Skylanders games. The toys were pretty pricey, and Spyro's design was wrong in every single way. Contrary to popular belief, though, these games were pretty fun to play regardless of your age. Every character came with their own movesets that made combat entertaining in both visuals and mechanics, and there are some moments in the stories that were genuinely funny or interesting in its own goofy way. Although again, the Toys to Life market was getting pricey, so it's not hard to see why Skylanders and its competitors crashed and burned.
The perfect rhythm of the island must be restored before it's too late.
Death Stranding. At one point, it seemed as if every Hideo Kojima fan was on board with Death Stranding. What's his new game gonna be like? How's it gonna play? Ooh, the excitement! So much mystery and auteurishness. Well, everyone was there until we got our first look at gameplay a few months before launch. So many dreams dashed because Kojima and his team decided to develop a delivery game, or as many folks called it, Amazon Prime Simulator.
America is a country. Anybody could go anywhere they damn well please. No need for couriers like yourself.
And so, folks walked away from Death Stranding before it even came out. Those that stuck with it found a neat game that demands you be efficient in deliveries and use a multitude of cleverly implemented tools to get the job done. Fable 3. Fable 3 did see some justifiable criticisms made against it, much of the ire being made against how interactions were handled and expressions were more limited. Lionhead Studios could have done a better job at handling morality and player choices too. However, some straight up demonize Fable 3, downplaying the story to "your brother is a jerk" or complaining too much about the subtle changes in your character's appearance. We can see some of those grievances being a bit frustrating, but enough to call Fable 3 the worst in the series? Isn't that a bit far-fetched? Or did nobody play Fable Heroes or Fable the Journey?
Our hero returns, bringing good tidings.
Borderlands series.
Lethal force authorized. There is no option.
The biggest complaint we constantly see about Borderlands is that the game is cringe. The complaint often being directed towards its humor. In all honesty, Borderlands was funny way back in 2012 when the second game was popping off. Pre-sequel made a solid effort as well. However, we can see why this didn't work out for Borderlands 3 and Tiny Tina's Wonderlands.
Okay, so you saw a corporation that was getting curb stomped by a way bigger and cooler corporation, and you said, I'm going with Team Loser Stash?
The hyperactivity, the over-explaining, and the constant quipping has gotten tiresome and less clever over the years. It doesn't make Borderlands in particular an awful series, just hard to tolerate when focusing on the story and characters. Gameplay-wise, each game feels pretty good with its gunplay and can feel better to play once you've invested in some skills. If only the jokes went beyond saying random things at an obnoxiously loud volume. Gex series. For years, Gex has been memed and dunked on for his outdated references and annoyingly 90s era snarkiness. It has sort of painted the gecko in a negative light, and really, the constant memes do not help.
I love the smell of bug spray in the morning. Smells like victory.
But for the few who did play the games back then, a lot of them swear that Gex did have some great games. Whether it was jumping through TV channels or running around while playing as a secret agent, the Gex games had some fun ideas, despite most of those ideas being purely thematic or simple in execution. We'll just see how many of them are still around when the remasters come out.
You laughing at me? So you think I'm funny? I entertain you?
Kingdom Hearts series. Look, we will go up to bat for Kingdom Hearts on any given day. From the various Disney worlds you get to explore to the insanely fun combat and new mechanics each game brings, it's no wonder why Kingdom Hearts is loved by so many. But when you ask why someone would dismiss the series, it's often because of the story and writing.
Can you feel Sora?
Can you feel Sora?
You know what we're talking about, all that light and dark talk. The light is meant to keep the dark out so that the light can stay in our hearts. Granted, it doesn't start up until it gets deeper into the first game, but once that talk starts, it doesn't let up. That said, we do get why some shove Kingdom Hearts aside and roll their eyes at it.
Why are you in my heart?
Assassin's Creed series. While Assassin's Creed has been around for an incredibly long time, its popularity has dwindled the longer it's gone on. Many still get enjoyment from running around historic cities and messing with each game's stealth mechanics and skill trees. Fans from the old days, on the other hand, have denounced the newer era. The RPG elements and open world bloat just isn't what the older games were like, and so with each new game, a wave of disappointment is felt from various corners of the fan base. Assassin's Creed still sells tons of copies, but the community just isn't as big and lively as it used to be.
They are guilty of worse crimes. God forgive me, but there are times when violence is the only course.
On that, we are agreed.
Starfield. Much of the ire towards Starfield can be traced to simply console wars silliness. It isn't the greatest title Bethesda has ever put out, and yet it was treated as such when it launched. It may not have delivered on a lot of the promises or potential as many were hoping for, but in the end, the focus was on exploration, and we got that in abundance. The slow improvement may be a Bethesda staple for better or worse, but chances are newcomers who leap into this spacefaring adventure are going to get a lot more for their buck than those who may not have had the best time on day one. Soul Calibur series. Soul Calibur is in the weird position where it's constantly living in the shadow of its slightly older brother, Tekken. And it isn't hard to see why one is favored more than the other. Sure, fans of Bandai Namco and fighting games in general know what Soul Calibur is, and many of them have a solid understanding and appreciation for it. But to an average player who loves Tekken and thinks, ooh, this game's from the same publisher, so it's Tekken with swords, well, you can only imagine the disappointment they're setting themselves up for. Soul Calibur plays so differently compared to its more successful sibling. It's slower, it's a bit more clunky, and much more focused on defense and counters. That said, the failure of Soul Calibur 6 was almost expected, albeit sad to witness.
Tried to warn you.
Dead or Alive series. The Dead or Alive games truly are some of the greatest 3D fighting games you could possibly play. Even the 1996 original holds up insanely well in controls, and Dead or Alive 6 is only considered the worst in the series because of its post-launch support and casualization of the fighting game mechanics. Problem is that saying that you're a fan of the series to an outsider does hold some social risks. The jiggle physics are real, they are prominent, and at first glance, they can be off-putting. That being said, it's more of a case of them working adjacent to a great fighting system, not smothering it, if you get our drift. BioShock II.
Big sister doesn't want you playing with me.
While the first BioShock is always held in high regard, and rightfully so, the same cannot be said for its sequel. Right away, you can tell that creator Ken Levine had little to no involvement with BioShock 2. Some disregard it and trash it without hesitation for unknown reasons. The slow start is a bit irritating, yes, and some parts of the game do feel like they were recycled from the first game. Even so, the story and gameplay were top-notch, and even the multiplayer was surprisingly fun in its own way. So where did all the hate for this game come from? Batman Arkham Origins and Batman Arkham Knight.
What is that? Behind you! Oh, come on. Expect me to fall for that? I mean, try something original.
We have all heard the complaints about these two games several times over. Origins had an open world with nothing to do in it, while Knight ham-fisted the Batmobile and tank gameplay a few times too many. That does not negate the other parts of the game that are done really well here. Knight ran with Origins' idea of an open-world Batman game and added a ton of complexity to Gotham's layout through hidden militia bases and secrets shoved into alleyways. Plus, Origins did offer a unique idea in having to piece together crime scenes and look for evidence based on how they most likely played out. And to Knight's credit, the Batmobile segments weren't as frequent as some make it out to be. They aren't perfect Batman games, but to just cast them aside like they're fodder might be a bit out of line. The Last of Us Part 2. Whether you're a hardcore fan or a casual outside observer, it seems as if The Last of Us Part 2 can never get any ounce of respect. You have people angry about Joel dying and revering him like a saint, even though he's just as awful as Abby. Speaking of, Abby is one of the biggest points of contention with this game, as some point out how much of a slog her portion of the game is.
Don't ever let me see you again.
Others take it a much more politically inept extreme. So many focus on Abby and Joel that you just cannot have a serious conversation about the game's sound design, the combat, not even the impressive amount of accessibility options. Fortnite. So many folks write off Fortnite now like it's the worst game you can possibly play. We have definitely criticized the game for its obsession with crossovers and licensed cosmetics in the past. But most just see a dumb game the kids are into. What most fail to recognize is that Fortnite can be really fun between the Zero Build, Rocket Racing, and Fortnite Fest modes. There are even some user-created games that are equally fun to play through and give the free-to-play title more replay value than it probably should have. So we really should give Epic Games the credit in making a platform that is super malleable instead of hating on the game just because it's mega popular and it's cool to hate on the game. But tell us in the comments below, what's a game you feel people are too quick to hate on? And be sure to subscribe to MojoPlays for more great videos every day.
No such thing as a Batman, huh?